We're very pleased to welcome Carolin Roth from CNBC, who is going to be looking after us and making sure that we get the desired amount of content, no BS answers, things like that, you know. So you're the expert in that department. And we're very pleased to welcome Tim Webster, CSO and co-founder of the Exchange Lab, John Beasley, ex-CMO Monster Energy, CMO Vero, Dan Benedict, Worldwide Chief Client Officer of Maxus, and Patrick Muir, co-founder and CMO Egg Bank, acting CMO Sherpa. I hope that's all accurate. So, Carolyn, over to you. Thank you very much.
Michael, thank you so much for that. Just to introduce myself very briefly, my name is Carolin Roth. I'm based in London. I work for CNBC. This is a financial and business news channel. And as of last year, for about a year now, I've been anchoring a show called Marketing, Media, Money, which focuses on the future of advertising, the future of marketing, and the job of a CMO. So I'm really excited to be here. This is my first year in Kahn, and it's incredibly hot. I didn't expect it to be quite that hot, so I hope that all of you have a cold drink in your hand. If not, you know, I can promise you that hopefully this debate is going to be quite heated too, so you may want to get a drink just in case now. So Michael's already done the introduction. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Just to explain the rules of the game, each of the panelists will get 2 minutes time at the beginning of the debate to explain his stance on why they're pro-programmatic or con-programmatic. And I want to kick things off with Tim. Tim, you're in the pro camp. Explain to us why.
Thank you. Yes, I'm in the pro camp, which is probably ideal, seeing as I work for a programmatic agency. The reason I'm in the pro camp is consumer media consumption habits have changed. We now consume media through digital devices, whether that be our phones, our tablets, we stream TV, and naturally that lends itself to the automation of ad delivery, which is what programmatic is. Why is that important? Because it brings something into the equation that hasn't been possible for advertisers and brands before, which is the use of data. Firstly, you can use your first-party data, third-party data. The information that we have and our understanding of consumers, our customers, where they are in a customer life cycle or journey, where they are in that at a particular point in relationship they have with a brand. So that gives us one holistic view. Secondly, we can use data to understand their media consumption. So what devices are they communicating? And join that up so we have one coherent conversation with consumers. And then lastly, we can also use that data to inform the message. And it's not something that I think programmatic's nailed yet. And there's certainly going to be a lot of conversation and debate, I'm sure, around creative. But data can actually be used to inform the creative message. And when we get better at that, I think it really is the future.
Thank you so much for that. Patrick, over to you. You're the other member here of the panel that is pro-programmatic. Why?
Unlike a lot of the people who are at Cannes this week, I've spent pretty much my entire career on the client side. I came into marketing originally from a sales environment, and what I liked about marketing is I could get to do what I did with sales, but on a massive scale, and getting lots and lots of people to buy stuff and to do things. And ever since that beginning, what I've been trying to do in my marketing career is to remove any thought or idea of subjectivity over what we were doing. It always struck me as amazing when I came into it from a direct marketing viewpoint. Every penny I was spending got turned over 3 or 4 times, who I was targeting, with what message, which piece of text, what the call to action, which phone number. This was back in the Middle Ages, before digital. And I'd be able to see what was happening. And then on various other parts of the marketing mix, it was kind of, I think we should spend about 10 million, seems about the right number. Is everyone okay with that? Which I thought was ludicrous. So what I've seen over that period of time, through digital and to where we are today, is a gradual democratization of the information that was being fed to us from agencies and so forth. So I could really get to understand exactly who my customers were. I could link the back-end data boys and girls through the marketing campaigns and the advertising campaigns to the agency, and I could actually start to link those things together and get the right product and the right message in front of the right customer. Now, that's mainly been a digital activity up to now, where we are today. The idea of being able to do that with multiple media and broadcast and outdoor and stuff like that, from a client point of view, where I come from, is absolutely the direction that we need to head, and is very exciting.
Patrick, thank you so much for that. Now let's step over to the other camp, the Kahn camp. John?
Okay, so it's this is arguably a hard one to argue, specifically in this environment. But I think the challenge for me with programmatic is it endangers the sort of commoditization of media. It's great for the sort of the background noise, but again, which is a percentage of the job. That is what you want to deliver in the most efficient and best way. But I think the challenge for me comes when you're trying to disrupt that noise. You're trying to create something that stands out, something that's surprising, that is counter-algorithmic. And I say this from the point of view, I spent the last 7 or 8 years at Monster Energy, where we were acutely aware of who our audience was. Only 20% of any population drink energy drinks, so you're trying to be as targeted as possible. So, hey, programmatic should be our best friend. But at the same time, there's what you deliver and the way you deliver it, and there's an element there which is always looking to surprise and delight. And for me, the future there is always an element of the future that will be unknown, and which is brilliant. That's perfect. It is scary, unpredictable, and unmanageable, and the perfect ecosystem to cultivate creativity. And that's the element where I see programmatic currently fall short.
Dan is nodding his head.
Yeah, my argument's similar. I mean, advertising's always been about providing something that's meaningful, valuable, relevant to consumers. Whether that's through traditional routes or whether that's through digitized routes should make no difference whatsoever. So for me, I'm seeing that, of course, the future is programmatic, but it needs to be more creative. And is it today? I'm not sure that it is. If you look at the real benefit of programmatic, it's taking the consumer through the journey, all right, through that digital journey. And does the creativity meet that? Are we all being served different types of ads that are creative based on the journey that we're taking through that digital environment at that given stage? I don't think it is creative enough. How many awards that are being given just down the road are those that are coming through programmatic creative development? Not enough, I'd argue. So that's kind of one thing. The next, I suppose, is around optimization. And I suppose the argument here is optimization and always just looking at ROI and efficiency versus emotionalization. So again, as consumers, we kind of want to be entertained, we want to be informed, we want to be inspired by advertising. Why did that change now just because the world's moved to a digital environment? It shouldn't change. The next thought is really around tech and pipes. How many of you guys in this room are just confused by too much jargon, by the fact that we make everything complex in order probably to self-sustain our industry? I don't know. I'm personally confused. Most of my clients are, as well. And we've got to simplify that. And at the moment, we are just really making it very, very complex. So let's, make that much more simple. And the final one, I suppose, is around audience. And it's fantastic that we were able to target those that are addressable first in the way in which we do things. That's very, very different to the past. But what about bringing in loads of other layers of creativity? And creativity in advertising and moving pictures and sound has always existed. So it's not just about it being audience first. What about mood? What about context? What about additional meaning? So for me, the argument is in favor of creativity and less so within the current functional or rational state that we sit in.
All right, Dan, thank you so much for that. Plenty of points that I want to pick up on. And Tim, let me kick things off with you. We talked a lot about creativity and how that might be lost in the face of programmatic advertising. What's your rebuttal?
I think what we're actually doing here, we're supposed to be debating programmatic, which is the method of delivery. I'd actually say there are challenges around creative within digital media. The programmatic part is just how the ad actually appears in front of a consumer. So these challenges are challenges with digital. They're not actually challenges around programmatic and if that's the future of advertising. I think also to the point around, disrupting and it not necessarily just being about audience. Again, that comes down to understanding, having an idea, being creative, what you actually want to achieve. It is a different skill set. It's not all about algorithms, but it does require people to operate and then they can deliver against what that creative idea is. So it's a different skill set and a different understanding, and everyone is on a journey to learn that, but that doesn't mean it has to stifle creativity.
That's a really interesting point. So essentially you're saying that even with programmatic, creativity is perfectly possible. It's more of a difficulty, it's more of a caveat that comes with the entire territory with digital ads, you say.
As I say, it's a challenge to the digital industry. We're just talking about how we actually get those ads in front of people.
John.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's easy to take the debate away from it and just move it into creativity. And actually, that's just about creatives catching up. I think whenever there's kind of new technology comes in, there's that kind of that human nature to sort of rush ahead and do something just because we can, not because we should, and to really use the technology and then work out later how we should use it, because that's about pioneering and about moving forward. And I think that is the beauty of programmatic. Is it perfect now? No, but who wouldn't want to make it better? For me, the question really is, do we want everything to be programmatic? Do we want everything to be known? Do we want everything to be pre-allocated, pre-organised, pre-bookable, pre-decided and preordained? Because I want most of it to be. Like, don't get me wrong, I look at it's like human nature. I want human nature being kind of predictable is good, because I can forecast, I can model, and I want that for a percentage, but I want to have a certain amount of unpredictability because it allows me to surprise not only myself but my audience and maybe the industry. And I think that's the bit for me that we need to leave room for.
Patrick?
There are good media buyers and there are less good media buyers. And the really good ones are the ones that always work with me and with my team to deliver something and share the insights. And really what programmatic does on digital, and hopefully will do one day on everything, is share that black box thinking with the team that are trying to produce the creative and put the rubber on the road. So it's really just replacing what used to be an Excel spreadsheet presentation on this is what we think your media laydown should be, with something that you can interact with as a marketing team and actually come up with the right answer for your customers and connect it with the rest of the business. And for me, something weird has happened since digital really took hold as a percentage of the ad budget. And this is something anyone who's been in a marketing department will know, that the rest of the company regards you as the colouring in team. And actually, if you look at the true definition of marketing, you go back to the textbooks from the 60s and 70s, where it covered like all the elements of the business. We've regressed as a discipline to being something where it is basically the cool kids in the corner doing stuff with Facebook and Twitter. And product will do what product does, and finance will do what finance does, and then you get to do some stuff on social media if you're lucky. Whereas democratizing that information of what we're doing with whom and who are the customers and how are they actually working, and taking that off the table so that it's owned by the business, actually, I would argue allows the company, the marketing team, to actually go back to being creative in terms of what message you're actually putting in what context to the customer, but also creative in what are the products and the product features you want to put in front of the customer, and where do you want to make those interventions. So actually that democratization of what previously was a black box model by your media agency allows, or will allow, the marketing team to go back to doing what they should be doing, which is the full suite of the marketing mix and taking that to the market.
Dan, let me come back to you. Are you con programmatic buying or ad buying simply because you're coming from the agency side, because you think you're worried about the fact there might be too much disintermediation, that you simply won't be needed anymore?
I don't think so. No.
Why not? Why not?
No, I don't think so. I'm coming from the perspective that the technology has grown exponentially, and it's grown quicker than the creative development has grown, in my mind anyway. And that needs to catch up. So that's one side of my argument. And the other one, I suppose, is I'm not seeing enough of the technologically data-driven insights that are then shaping that creative in the first place. And for me, if both of those things have a little bit of a shift in direction, then we'll be in a much better space. We've all got to be relatively pro-programmatic. How can we not? You know, it's not the future, it's the present, right? And it's also been the recent past. So, you know, of course we need to be pro, but we need to be able to redefine the direction that it's going in some respects.
Does everyone agree here? I guess the two gentlemen who are on the pro side, I guess you would agree that this is the future. Resistance is futile. We got to deal with it. If not, maybe, you know, we need to join it if we can't beat it.
Well, I think a lot of this debate is actually where the rest of media goes. So at the moment, you know, digital is eating a lot of broadcast's lunch, and broadcast, particularly in the UK at least, is now wondering what do we do about this, and do we actually break the model that we've always had of actually how people buy and utilise advertising in that way, or do you embrace the digital model and start to look at different ways of companies being able to advertise through that media? And certainly, you know, from the companies I'm involved with, there is some evidence of that is beginning to shift. And go back 5 years, not a chance, matey. You know, you'll get what you're given, and you'll have to go through a media buyer to actually get it. Whereas now you can have a direct conversation. So I know that the big broadcast owners are now starting to think about how we can be more relevant to companies that are growing up and becoming coming of age, who are used to dealing with media in a particular way. But a lot of it, I'm sure, is being debated and talked about, you know, this whole week up and down the coast. Is, you know, do the big broadcasters actually follow the model and start to look at more innovative ways of engaging with their audience and with their advertisers?
For me, it's quite simple. You know, advertising, and what brought me into advertising 25, 28 years ago was excitement. And programmatic needs to bring an element of excitement back into communication.
And you don't think it does that at this point?
I don't think it's doing enough of that yet. You know, I don't think. I think that the rationalization and the technical side is driving it, and I want to see more excitement back in, as consumers do.
But to be honest, the consumer doesn't care. The end consumer doesn't know whether the ad was bought programmatically or not, right?
No. I think where there still is some work to be done is the application of the technologies that we're talking about here. There is work to be done creatively, but does the consumer care how the ad was delivered? No. What they care about is it engaging? Is it additive to their consumption experience? We've
Agreed.
said some of the things are predominantly around digital media. I don't think anyone could say we've nailed how to deliver advertising on mobile devices, because we haven't. That's a digital challenge. So we can move away from the conversation about the pipework. We need to get better at the application of media.
Yeah, I think the key thing there is engagement. I mean, there's two sides to this, right? There's your side, which is which I 100% agree with, which is the practical reality of right now is you can definitely get something. The perfect thing here is that you can know your audience, you can highlight it, group it, identify it, and then you can place something in front of them. But the challenge is, can you do it in a way that, yes, they will see it, but will they engage? Will it make them want to keep coming back over and over again to be in love with your business, your brand, and have a relationship with you, I guess? And I think the opportunity is definitely there, because it's, you know, you're in a way that it makes TV feel a little sketchy. You know, it's like, well, there's a decent chance a lot of people are going to see it, but there's a lot of people who you don't really care about who are also going to see it. Whereas I guess the beauty of programmatic is, right, you're not going to reach them, but are you going to be able to reach them in a way that you want to? And just because you can reach them, are you going to be able to have that impact? Are you going to be able to start that conversation, that connection? Because ultimately, for me, the global standard, if you like, for this is the value of your business has to be in the value of your engaged audience.
I just want to bring in the latest YouTube scandal, and this week, obviously, we heard that YouTube is taking a number of steps to address this very important problem. Does anyone here believe that we blame programmatic for this? Is this the underlying cause of what happened with YouTube?
I think actually programmatic gets blamed for a number of things. So actually I'm going to bring viewability in, and then I'll answer your question about YouTube. Was an ad seen? That's an advertising thing. In digital media, we can count things, we can measure things. Just because an ad was delivered programmatically doesn't actually influence whether it was seen. So before programmatic, we used to buy off ad networks, and we'd buy remnant space that was at the bottom of a web page. The ads weren't seen. So viewability isn't a programmatic thing, it's an advertising thing. And when you talk about YouTube, brand safety is obviously incredibly important. I don't necessarily see it as a programmatic thing. In this instance for YouTube, programmatic hasn't helped, but it's not the root cause. It's still the content there that's sitting on YouTube. And again, was that ad delivered programmatically, or was it through a media booking on content that slipped through their net?
Yeah, to back that up, and a lot of you are probably too young to remember a time when you went onto any search engine and you searched flip-flops, you'd get some flip-flops and a lot of porn and some gambling. So you go, I don't want to do that because I'm in the office, so I'll search for vodka. That seems safe, and you'd get some vodka and a lot of porn. And in the early days of Egg, when we were literally pioneering how we'd buy digital advertising, and actually what we do with it, we were probably on more than our fair share of sites you wouldn't want your parents catching you looking at. So it goes back to the dawn of digital, 17 years ago, 18 years ago. But it's really, really difficult to stop being where you are unless you're going to buy directly with a particular site owner. And there's always space for doing that, is for doing a deal with a particular media owner and just positioning yourself there. But if you're after being on sort of on a mass basis, it's very difficult to avoid doing. And going back to pre-programmatic, when you were just doing crappy CPM deals, you were still appearing where you didn't really want your brand appearing. But you had to be vetted, of course, and searched and find out where they were.
Same for TV, right?
It's very important.
I think actually to that point, the biggest growth in programmatic spend has actually been programmatic direct, where there is that relationship direct with the media owner. So that's already happening now, and I think we've seen a shift from it being performance-based remnant space, moving back to quality content where you want your brand to be seen and having direct relationships with those media owners, and then it comes down to, again, the pipework and delivery of that, and we're seeing that now.
I think the interesting thing here, and I mean that is amazing and fascinating to hear that the Egg placed itself in a few interesting places
from the olden days.
From the olden days, that is a one I will be retelling. But the thing I think that's I think the thing that's kind of I think that's just noise, right? When you see those stories, I think that's just good. Like, it's good newspaper filling. It's a good story, and so it gets good publicity, and the media know it's a hot topic. So anything that feels hot topic-y will get some headline space, as is the way for politics and any other news story. But I think the thing that you kind of forget there is that there is a responsibility on anyone involved. So there's a responsibility on the publishers, to look after their inventory, to make sure that that they have accountability for content not being seen in those spaces. There's a accountability on media agencies who have got a budget, not to use that budget responsibly and accountably, and make sure that the content doesn't get served in the wrong place. And then there's a responsibility to clients to be targeted. This is a targeted media, and you should be targeted because you can be. But I guess there's always that temptation then that says, well, look, I only want to reach this many, and then someone goes, oh, here's a really big number that will impress the board, and you're like, yeah, go on then. And I think, but that is responsibility at the end of the day, and it's on everyone. It's not on one. It's not on programmatic. It's on everyone.
So can I?
And the responsibility for us as an industry to be able to self-regulate better than we're doing, absolutely. And to build the technology to self-regulate better than we're doing at the moment. So if you look at the development and the drive of the technology over the course of the last 2, 3, 4 years, so let's put that into good use to be able to self-regulate better.
Dan, do you think that programmatic is simply too expensive? Do you think it drives up the cost unnecessarily?
No, I don't.
So cost is not an issue with this, because I guess it's very difficult to see how much it'll cost you. It might be cheaper, it might be more expensive, but there really is no visibility.
I think the industry's drive for ROI and our clients' desire and requirement for ongoing efficiency and optimization is the challenge, and it comes back to my point of driving better creativity, or as you put, John, talking about it from an engagement perspective, entertain, inform, educate our consumers better. So from my perspective, it's less about the ROI, the cost, or the efficiency, and more about the element of the task of entertainment, education, information, inspiring.
John, do you think cost is an issue?
I mean, I think it's a challenge. I think you don't want variability. You don't want to be going into an auction where it could cost you a lot more than you anticipated. But
sort of like eBay.
Yeah, but then it is exactly that. But then at the same time, I guess to the point earlier that it's who you work with, and I guess there's the better the team you work with, the better that's going to be managed and forecast and to any degree. So I think it's it requires education. It's definitely a perceptual limitation, but it's something that can be very easily overcome. It just requires good people and good practice.
Before we open up the floor to question, Tim, I just want to come back to one point that I discussed with your boss this morning, very interesting one, basically saying that man needs to work alongside machine. It can't be the machine on its own. Why do you think this mix of man and machine is so important?
The way we're buying media has changed. That's what we're talking about. There's a lot of confusion, and to cut through that, it's the people. It's a new skill set. So just relying on an algorithm or black box to make all those choices ultimately be irresponsible. It's a new skill set, and everyone is upskilling. Advertisers and brands are bringing people in-house that understand ad tech and martech to help steer them, because it is the future. So,
all right. We are now open for questions.
That are delivering engaging creativity programmatically and well.
Who's that directed to?
It's directed to the panel. Sorry.
Not anyone in specific. Okay.
No,
who wants to take the question?
I'm hearing about all the problems, but I'm just there've got to be some good examples out there that can act as standards for others to go, hey, wait a minute, if they can do that, I can too.
Maybe one of the pros.
I think we're at quite an early stage still in how we deploy the technology. So we've gone in recent years from very small text ads that were very relevant to the audience and just having a great time putting those in front of a much better audience and being able to measure that. So actually, the con side of the panel is correct in that actually being able to do that creatively across different media we're only just coming up against that as being the next frontier of gaining marketing efficiency. And it's got to be better than Ray Winston offering me great betting odds in the middle of any sporting event that I choose to watch. But again, that's at the stage we're at, and it's probably the gaming industry, joking aside, that has taken that engagement, full throttle, to present it. But you wouldn't call it exciting or creative. It's just desperately trying to present.
I don't know. I was about to say we didn't plant him, by the way, but that was probably one of the best arguments so far. But actually, I think for me it is gaming. Like any gaming company, and is it engaging, or like it's so engaging that they'll adjust their product on the fly based on essentially performance marketing, which is it's all semantics, but they'll adjust their product to make their product even more sellable, even more engaging. So yeah, pick any Sharkwell, pick any gaming company that has that does app or online gaming as a really good example of how to deliver engagement. And improve your product because of it. And as you said, to improve your business, marketing suddenly becomes an influencing factor on the overall business. Damn it. That was actually helping you, wasn't it?
Yes.
That wasn't very smart.
No, but I mean, to answer that as well, I mean, without having, the best example in mind, in 3 days' time, when we look at, where the awards have been designated from just across the road over there, it'd be interesting to see how many are coming out, from a creative perspective through the programmatic route. And there need to be, and we need to champion them. And I think the fact that none of us can really think of any now, apart from some gaming ads, which probably, aren't that creative. They're effective, yeah, but they're not necessarily creative, entertaining, in the way in which we would have seen communication and advertising in the past, maybe answers the question.
Tim, finally.
I'm hoping that changes and we do see things coming out, from the awards that are demonstrating its creativity and entertainment.
Let's hope so. Tim, finally, I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you have an example of where programmatic actually works? I did put you on the spot.
That's fine. I think where programmatic has started is through DR spend, so direct response, where people are measuring return on investment. It's where digital media started. And if you look at the spend and growth in spend, that is delivering against the goals that advertisers are currently setting against that activity. The next stage is for it to move into the branding side of things, the engagement, and we're all agreeing that there needs to be developments in creativity and the creative assets that are delivered. So the success is, look at the amount being spent. Advertisers don't waste money, and currently they've been using it as a DR medium.
Any other questions, please? I'll give you some more time to think about some of the questions, but I've got another one for the panel. Why is it that programmatic hasn't really conquered TV yet? What's the problem here? That seems like the last frontier, but it seems unconquerable at this point.
I think there's some unique challenges with TV, in the same you used to get with press, where they're very responsible for the overall product that they're putting across. So the attractiveness and relevancy of the advert, we actually love adverts. We love big ticket advertisements, and for a long time after the financial crisis, it felt like we were never going to see big, glossy, amusing adverts ever again because no one had the budget, which again I'm sure was debated long and hard here at the time. Whereas now we've got them coming back again. So being able to do that programmatically and link the content to the audience, there's a lot of moving parts in delivering what we see in our living room, and it's just not caught up to that yet. But you're just starting to see the first elements of personalization, and we joked about gaming, but some of the gaming companies are doing that already, and it's just beginning to sort of put them into a more live feed than something that you had to upload like 6 weeks ago, like back in the dark ages. It's just going to take time, and it's going to take time for the media owners to actually figure out what are the more creative ways of doing deals with advertisers, and then for companies to come up with ways of serving those dynamic adverts in a way that doesn't ruin the overall effect of the channel. And you're a media owner. What's your view?
I find that, and I think this plays into the points that Dan and John were making before. I find that people and viewers are very unpredictable. It's very difficult to foresee what their reaction will be. After all, we're human beings, we're not bots, and that's why I personally feel that programmatic advertising could be problematic for TV at this point. John?
Yeah, I was like, programmatic can be problematic. There's some political repetition you could do. I think look, I think it's none of this is insurmountable. I think that's the, for me, that feels like the reality. And actually, you as you kind of move up the chain, if you like, in terms of the capacity to reach a bigger audience, the responsibility grows, and so all the lessons that need to be learned now, if you like, before you can progress and move on to the next level. But as I say, I still think there's. I think that's the reality, and I think that the technology is very easy to kind of get you there. It's just, will the kind of creativity have caught up so that what you're delivering can match the method of delivery? Because the method of delivery is fantastic, but the actual content probably hasn't caught up yet. That's the first thing, and then the second thing for me though is, there will always it's the quote on Einstein's wall. It's not everything that counts can be counted, not everything that can be counted counts. And I think that's always something that we've got to keep in mind here is our no one loves advertising. They just love it when it's done really well, because like any good piece of content, whether it's book, film, or music, it surprises and delights you, and maybe enables you to look at the world in a slightly different way. And that should always be our goal and ambition, however lofty it might be.
That's a great point.
I'd say the reason we're talking about TV, the technology isn't quite there yet. If you look at the way people are consuming content, things like Netflix, instant gratification, on demand, and that's over IP. Broadcast, is it through cable? Is it through a satellite dish? Is it broadcast? It's actually quite hard to programmatically insert an ad into content right now because the technology is not in place. As more of it is about on-demand content, it will become easier and we'll see a quicker adoption of programmatic in that space.
That'll take, what, 5, 10 years? Are we closer than we think?
5 or 10 years seems fairly reasonable. I think some of the predictions that you'll read is, in the next 18 months or by 2020, 80% of TV, there are some wild predictions that are made. It's going to take a bit longer than you're led to believe. These things always happen slightly slower.
All right, we've got one more question.
Hi, this question's for Dan. So with more and more advertisers seemingly taking their programmatic buys in-house, how much of a threat is this to the agency model?
Oh, that's a good question. You ask someone else. No, I think it's about working out the right kind of modular system, because I'm seeing, as a chief client officer of our organisation, I'm seeing quite a few of our clients starting to take some of their programmatic in-house. I think that it needs to work in a bit more of a modular way, from the media owner through to the agency, through to the advertiser as well. And of course, the advertisers wanting to own their own data. So that's the core reason that I'm finding anyway, with our clients anyway, as to why they're wanting to take it in-house. So they want to be able to be, the influencers themselves of their own information. For me, it's about finding the right modular system, and I mean that in a combination of the technology that's being used, and it needs to be agnostic enough, the people that are skilled enough to be able to do it, that can work across the different organizations. I think it's also an investment issue for some of our clients as well, an expertise issue in terms of finding the right talent, and as well also working with the right kind of organizations. So for me, and I'm chatting to quite a few of our advertisers and clients around the fact that it's about building that right modular system, leaving it all within an agency, leaving it or giving it all to a third party and a media owner, or taking it all in-house. I don't think is probably any one of those extremes is probably not giving them the best value. That's my personal view.
I think some of it will depend on the agencies themselves, because from a client's viewpoint, particularly if you're in the disruption market, just handing your stuff to an agency who's then going to plug it in and give you the result, you're very soon going to end up in an arms race with other people trying to do the same thing. So the game then becomes about how you use the tools at your disposal, or whether they're at your disposal or via your agency, to actually be able to come up with a different way of looking at it, a different way of finding and engaging with your customers, different pockets of value, so that you can basically stay one step ahead of your competition. And one of the problems with a lot of the marketing tools available now is they just encourage everybody to squeeze down the same funnels, which means eventually to disrupt, you need to step out of that and come up with something completely different. And so the agencies that help clients do that and are willing to engage with disrupting some of those existing things will continue to do well. And I think if they just stay churning out the same thing as 4 or 5 other shops on the street, it'd be really difficult for a client who's looking to make disruptions or exponential improvements just to stay in that model.
Any other questions? All right, that leaves us with some of the closing remarks. I just wonder if any of you have been, keen to switch sides during the course of this debate, or whether you are even, more keen to stay on your side. How do you feel?
I think you'll probably find we're all pretty much on the same page. I think to summarise, there's a lot of work that needs to be done around creativity. I'd also say it's actually quite refreshing to have sat here for 45 minutes and it not all be about fraud, viewability, and those topics. So, yes, futures in creativity.
Tim, thank you.
Yes, I still believe, partly because I want to believe it, that the future is programmatic or some version of it, particularly, as you said, with the broadcasters that maybe we haven't quite invented yet for the whole sort of ecosystem of broadcast. It's already there in digital, you know, that horse has bolted. But for the rest of media, you know, there is always room for innovation and disruption and doing something differently. But that democratization of data and where it is and what you can do with it, so that marketers can go back to doing all elements of the marketing mix, I'm still vehemently in favour and believe in.
And John, you didn't switch to the other side either.
No. Well, it's hard for. No, I think that it is. I would be lying if I said I wasn't a massive fan of programmatic and a vehement supporter of ignoring news and saying that actually it's just incumbent on all of us to make it better. And so that for me it is and will always be the case. And I'm a huge believer in the contribution, as you know, as Hutch put it, the contribution of owning and managing your data and how that can massively contribute to your business. We saw it at Monster. You know, we focused on audience and data and went from and overtook Red Bull in engagement on all social platforms. Overtook them in the US market, and you know, with the third highest share price of the last 20 years. So it works. You know, it's a really important factor for all companies should be taking on board. I just think as it develops, as it grows, the thing that needs to be, as we've talked about, the thing that needs to be taken into account is how do you allow for the creative, for the content, and for the ability to surprise and delight people to be a key factor in what drives it forward and not just something that's being dragged along behind.
And Dan gets the last word.
I mean, how exciting. We got an opportunity to be able to learn and know so much about consumer behavior, and let's put it back into, you know, the way in which programmatic advertising is actually reaching people on a daily basis and making the most of out of the fact that we're now understanding what their journey is in comms. So exploit it, make it fun and inspiring.
Gentlemen, thank you so much. Really appreciate your insight. Very insightful. Thank you so much.